Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Norwegian here. We share a lot of the folklore with the rest of Scandinavia. Trolls, Tusser, Hulder, etc. etc. But one of the more interesting things that many farmers still believe in is the Nisse. They're looked upon as tiny goblin-like people, not taller than 1 to 2 feet, usually wearing a red pointy hat. I used to know a farmer's family that would always ask their local Nisse before they did any changes on the farm. Supposedly, if they didn't, equipment would stop working and accidents would constantly happen. They would also put out food for him on special occasions, although I've always believed that it must be the animals that made the food disappear in the night. If this thread is still alive tomorrow, I'll post some local myths from Norway.
I only really have this one that my grandmother used to tell me when I was little. I'm Swedish, but this story is probably a bit more well-known. There once was this little girl. She was rude, spoiled and ungrateful. As is typical of her, she went around her house complaining to her mother about being hungry, and the mother, who was a kind lady, gave her some bread. The girl replied,
"I don't like bread,"
and stormed out, but not before grabbing the bread. She had other plans for it rather than eating. We need a quick interlude to speak about the little people who live underground. These people are very nice to those they like, but very, very mean to those they don't. They saw how this girl was being very spoiled and not thankful for her food, and they didn't like it. The girl was now angrily stomping along a dirt path, and decided that she was going to throw the bread to the ground. That would show her mother. She tossed it on the dirt and began stomping it into the earth. But the little people who live underground didn't like this. They didn't like it at all. With tiny hands they reached up from down under, breaking out from the ground their thin arms stretched, and with clammy fingers they grabbed hold of the girl's ankles, and slowly pulled her down screaming into the depth below. Since that day the little spoiled girl has been forced to live with the little people underground, never to return to her mother.
Well, Scandinavia has a quite extensive repertoire of cryptids and the stuff. There are a lot of stories regarding the traditional troll, not the internet kind, Huldra, Tusser and so forth. They have many names, but they all refer to some form of the hidden people. They are seen as pranksters, helpers and devils, their behavior mostly affected by the way you treat them. Huldra is a beautiful female, but with a cowtail. She charms and entraps lone male wanderers in the mountains, and lead them away, never to be found again. But she isn't always a foe. A tale I remember of her is where a girl tending to her family's livestock on the summer pasture up in the mountains is suffering from joint pains, and is visited by Huldra. She brings the girl a bowl and a salve, which heals her. Another one is where a young man meets a beautiful woman up in the mountains. He spots her coattail, but plays along. Just as Huldra thinks she has him hooked, he pulls out his knife, and throws it into her back, and she disappears. So she is both a helper and a danger, but more as a danger. Writing this down makes me remember a story my grandmother told me a long time ago. Tussers don't have a very specific physical description, but are smaller than humans, living underground near humans, sometimes in a symbiotic relationship. Now, my father's side of the family is from Telemark, and my grandmother grew up on the Broughty farm near Kvitesied in Inner Telemark. It was a small farm, so I doubt you will find it via Google Maps. The valleys and highlands of Telemark were the last to be charted and christened in Norway, and so kept a lot of ancient tradition that more accessible areas lost over time. Anyways, my grandmother told me of her uncle, I believe, who had a farm, also near Kvitesied. On this farm was a large mound, and as she told me there lived Tusser, hidden people, beneath it. My granduncle kept a good relationship with them for the most part. He would put out some porridge for them from time to time, and the bowl would always be empty when he went to collect it. This isn't noteworthy really, as it could just as likely have been an animal, but it was eaten with a wooden spoon, which always would be in the bowl afterwards. Due to these acts of kindness, the hidden people acted sort of like hidden helpers, especially calming the farm animals during storms and cold nights. My granduncle never really saw them, but a couple of times he found a silver spoon left near the mound. These spoons, I think he got 2 or 3 in total, are nothing like any patterns made by humans, and nobody has been able to find any similar ones. I believe they still are in family possession, so I should ask Grandma where they could have ended up. So Tussene, the Tuss, can cooperate with humans, but you better not anger them. Almost all the farms in Norway have got a farm tree, standing somewhere in the center of the cluster of farm buildings. They are considered slightly sacred, and are not to be cut in any way, unless the tree is dying. One time my granduncle got a bit too drunk, and in the drunken haze decided to cut down the farm tree. He went to the shed and brought out his trusty axe, went to the tree and swung the axe. The axe barely pierced the bark, and snapped between the axe head and the shaft. My granduncle, being a stubborn bastard, wasn't gonna be stopped by no damn tree, mounted a new shaft, and went to town on the tree again. Just like the first time, the axe broke, barely damaging the tree. Getting seriously pissed off, he went to the shed and brought out his chainsaw, fired it up and put it to the tree. The saw cut through a little bark, before the chain broke right off. This seemed to make my granduncle find his cool, and he never took his axe to that tree again. These creatures are an important part of Scandinavian mythology and heritage, but many seems to be ways of scaring people from doing stupid shit. Don't go swimming in small forest lakes, or Näkki will drown you. Don't get lost in the mountains alone, or trolls or Huldra will take you. Asbjornsen and Mo wrote down a lot of these stories, and they are really great. I don't know if they are translated. I bet somebody has done it, and I would really recommend reading them. Peer Gynt is also a fantastic play worth checking out. The musical piece, In the Hall of the Mountain King, is from that play. You should listen to it.
The Finnish folklore lottery gives you today the Liekkiö. Liekkiös, flamelings, were believed to be the angry souls of newborns killed or abandoned in the woods and swamps in Finland. They would cry in the night where they'd been left to rot, and would try to lure anyone to their graves to take them into the crags or bogs for company. Indeed, a fox in heat will sound exactly like a little boy crying. They do a longer warble of oddly human cries, too, not just the blood-curdling yelp. Iceland have a permutation of this legend, I believe. They even have an old children's song, in which a murdered newly born child sings to its mother to come back and get him. The mother does return, though not for the child but the frock she buried it in, and the baby eats the mother alive.
Here's one that is very local. Denmark is a rather old country, so we have a lot of tales about grey, white lady ghost. But this one comes directly from my great-grandmother, who is the only one to have ever claimed this story to be true. Now people in my family tend to get very old before they have kids, so this great-grandmother of mine, she was a young woman in the end of the 18th century. She lived and worked in a village just northeast of Randers, in Jutland, called Stavring. If anyone knows this area, then beware that the village is not the town called Stavring, is a small village of the same name. Anyways, back in feudal times, a farm was made in this area called Stavringard. There was a monastery attached to this farm, called Stavring Kloster. In the young years of my great-grandmother, the monastery was closed, since we got rid of Catholicism, and the monastery was then used as housing for old women of prestigious families. My great-grandmother worked nights at this place and would keep an eye on the hallway and such. It should be pointed out that my great-grandmother would have described herself as an atheist and did not even believe in local folklore. Well, anyway, she seriously claimed that one night she heard a knock on the door to the outside, which was found at the end of the corridor she was watching. She could see a glow through the window. She went and opened the door, and there stood a gray lady. The lady did not speak and started to walk in the door. Terrified, my great-grandmother gave room for the lady, and the lady would walk up to one of the doors, leading into the room of one of the eldest residents. The lady looked at the door, as if she intended to walk through it. My great-grandmother then opened the door and the lady walked in, sat on the chair beside the sleeping resident and looked at her. After some time, the gray lady would stand back up and walk out the room. The same exact moment that the lady would cross the doorway, my great-grandmother could hear the last breath of the resident exhaling. She looked at the resident at this time and then looked around, but the gray lady had vanished. This went on a few times, and my great-grandmother eventually got accustomed to it. Though someday, the home was closed and she was fired, she then went on to start her own shop, Brugs. She was the first lady in Denmark to start her own Brugs.
Any Finns here? Anyway, I'll post the ones I know here. Dunno if they've been already mentioned, but a Jatar is an evil female guardian of the woods, forest. She often looks like a giant snake or a dragon. She also feeds all the snakes and spreads diseases. She also likes to lead people astray in her forest. Who is a ghost that predicts someone's death in a very short notice. It usually appears either at the death scene or sometimes shortly after the death to the loved ones of the deceased. It leaves a bruise-like mark that's called hun purima, the bite of a huu. Kalmanvaki is the name of the creatures living in Tuonela, the land of the dead. They can be a group of ghosts, ghouls, or living dead. They can make living sick if the living see them. Often on Christmas night, these creatures would come to the world of the living and go to local churches to have a death mass. Kalmanvaki often attach themselves to a sick person and make his life completely miserable, making him and everything around him sick or dead.
In Finland, mothers used to keep their children from going to the shore alone by telling them about Näkki. Näkki, also Näcken in Swedish, was a kind of a god of the waters. Fishermen might offer small presents to him or greet him before going fishing. To any Finns, this is why some fishing enthusiasts still spit over their shoulder before starting to fish. But he, or she, sometimes, was also a sea monster of the freshwater variety. It would sometimes present itself to anyone wandering to the shore alone as a beautiful, young maiden sitting on a rock in the middle of the lake, washing herself. If the onlooker was of an improper bent and hid to stay looking, the Näkki would suddenly turn around, revealing its most hideous face, and petrifying the viewer.
Be me, around 10 or 11. Few people where I live far up north in Norway. It's the kind of place you drive by and not realize that there are actual people living there. Anyhow, one time while running and playing by myself in the mountains, I met a girl, out in the middle of nowhere. She told me her name was Herlia, Hyla? No idea, not a normal name at all, that's for sure. To describe her best as when I met her, she had on a long white summer dress, kinda ragged in the ends, her hair was brownish black. Eyes were kinda sunken into her skull and was big and totally black, like you could mirror yourself in em. She had pointy-ish ears and nose. But the fucked part was her mouth, she kinda had a Joker thing going. But she always smiled at me and was playful and kind. I digress. Asked her if she had just moved to this town. She said that she didn't live here, was just on visit here with her mother. I thought to myself, cool, a new friend over school break. I played with her in the forest, hills, streams. I was a loud ass snapping branches and striving around. While she was elegant, nearly floated, I swear no hill nor scree made her tire out. Anyhow, we played like this for almost a month. Heck, my mom even saw her once or twice, but not up close. This girl would not get close to our house. She stood far away waiting to get noticed. I remember mom yelling,
Anon, the girl is back for you.
With a wink in her voice. And then me rushing out to fool around in the forest with her. One day she looked kinda sad. Asked her what's wrong. She then told me she's sad because they have to leave soon. Most of all, she was sad over the fact that she really liked being here this time. I've lived here my entire life. Know all the people here. Never seen this girl in my life before she popped up out of the blue. She had this look all of a sudden, black as night.
I know Anon. You can come with me, so that we both can ask my mother to stay a bit longer.
Sounds like a great idea. We start walking to the cabins close to where I live, but then we walk past them. Okay, start to follow a path that leads to a lake. Me knowing that there is nothing out there started feeling odd. She was nearly jumping ahead, slowing down only for me to catch up. The closer we got to that lake, the more energetic she became. Her mouth got larger as the joy overcame her. That lake was only one hilltop away, and the way she acted and started to look kinda made me wish I'd never met her. I got this dreadful feeling in me that if I go there then something was about to happen. But being stupid me, crushing on some random girl I met in the forest. I kept on walking, once I crossed that hill and saw the lake. And that odd rock formation, but it had a door. And there was fucking smoke rising from the top. Once I saw that I noped so hard that I almost crapped my pants. I looked at her one last time and said, "Wait, I'm sorry. I forgot that they were making dinner at home. Gotta go, it's dinner time." Never ran so fast in my life. Could hear her screaming with a soft voice at first, Anon. Then it became sharp and raspy, Anon. And then screeching, Anon. I never looked back. I never looked into those eyes again. I never saw that fucked thing after that. But I somehow still wanna met her. I don't know what the fuck that was, but that was no human girl. Later find out that that rock formation was an old Sapmi offering site, rituals and all. WTF was that girl? WTF kinda creature did I have a crush on? Still remember her pendant thingy. Scribble it down everywhere, it's stuck on my mind. Thank you, creature of the forest. I now have a thing for ragged punk girls that want me no good. I actually went out looking for her, but now I walk with a silver knife. Just to make things clear, the door wasn't on the rock, tiny mountain crop. It was on the side, like a cellar door. Don't know, been there and looked but nothing there. Worst thing is, I know I'm not crazy. Heck, my mom made fun of me because of her. I'm gonna keep looking. Wondering if they come in the summertime and move with the reindeer or something else, because she has been here before, so I don't know. Out here trying to fuck a mystical creature.
Norsk friend here. I ain't got no local legends, but I have an experience or two to share. Eerie laughter. When I was a wee lad and was visiting my granddad's summer house, I was having a stroll with him up in the mountains. We were passing through a forested area where the trees were so old and dried up that it was hard to tell what sort they had once been, and they were so crooked some of them very nearly went in circles. We both froze in our tracks, for filling the air was the strangest laughter I ever heard. H-I-A-I-A-I-A-I-A-I-A-I-A, though I call it a laugh, it was without mirth. No malice either. Really, it was more like a nonsensical cry. And no, there ain't no animal that can make words like that, save for certain parody birds, and none of them live up here. It was a strange sound. So we went home and ate some rhubarb. That's the end of that story.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.